Hello everyone, this is David Nguyen from Eyebrows Academy. How is everyone doing today? Alright, this video, I just want to talk a little bit about some inspirational or aspirational, some tone order that I have not been able to do it. But there are some people who have been successfully done it. So a couple of years ago, I have a friend. She went to a Hong Kong expo and then she saw some artists there who did eyebrows without drawing. You see, normally when you work on the eyebrows, right, you would draw the right hand side and then you draw the left hand side and then you work, in the frame. But this guy and his students, or at least this guy, he could do it without any shape at all. And the final product, the right hand side and the left hand side look almost identical. And it's just very amazing. So I have thought about this one on and off for the last few years. And here's a few things that I want to talk about today. So let's say, just for example, as an example, right? Let's say you have this is the client, right? Pretend this is a client, right? And then on this side here, this is the, let's say this over here, you have one eyebrow, right? You have one eyebrow here, right? And then let's say on the other one, you have another eyebrows on this side, right? So how do you practice? I'm not saying that, you should not draw the shape, but how do you practice in such a way that, maybe in a couple of years, the right hand side and the left hand side almost balance or almost mirror. So this is really hard. It's a tone order. It's very hard to do. But I think about this problem and from I think that there are two perspectives, okay? In China, in the Chinese tradition, right, there's a saying that, if you practice something for 7 years, you have small success. And if you practice something for 10 years, you have big success. So normally it takes about 7 to 10 years. And we will talk more about that in the future. There's a word in Chinese, it's really hard to translate, but basically it's roughly I can translate it as like peaceful and focus. Your mind is very peaceful and then you focus. And it's just like a light bulb inside your head and it pop up. And that's when your intelligence opens up. Okay, we will talk about that in the future. But anyway, from an engineering standpoint, how do we make the right hand side and the left hand side almost identical without a shape? So a few years back, I was thinking about the problem, and here's what I recommend you guys to do. This is just my hobby. I don't have much time to practice, but I just want to give you guys some idea, so that you can entertain the idea to see if you can make the right hand side and the left hand side almost the same. So I think the first thing you need to do to practice is, let's say here, on a piece of paper, right? And you just try to cut, try to make the one stroke the same as the other stroke. Okay, this is not the same. So because I'm holding the camera in one hand, I do it with the other hand. So basically the first thing you need to practice is you have to practice the distance. You see what I'm saying? You have to practice the distance for, let's say this stroke right here, the distance from here, from the beginning to the end, right? The beginning to the end here is similar to the distance from the second stroke right here, from here to here. Basically the length. You try to make the length the same, okay? For example, try to make the length the same. You draw like this one, and then you draw the next one, and try to make the length similar. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Let's try another one. So the first thing you need to do is try to, without any aid, any shape or form, or line that help you, you try to make the length of your stroke, from one stroke to the other, make sure that the length are comparable. Okay, that's the first thing I recommend you to do. Okay, make sure the length of one stroke is similar to the next one. The second thing you need to do is it's called the distance or the displacement. So from this stroke to the next one, and from this one to this one here, the distance from here to here should be similar. Okay, those distances should be similar. Okay, those distances should be similar. For example, let's say I just do straight line. Okay, just do straight line. Can you guys see? Let me focus the camera. So let's say you do one stroke like this one, and then the next one, and then this one. So you try to place the strokes at equal distance or equidistance. You see what I'm saying? So from this stroke here to this stroke, let's say the distance is d1, and from here to here the distance is d2, and from here to here this is d3. So you try to make d1, d2, d3 almost the same. Okay, so you guys with me so far? So the first thing you need to do is the length of the stroke, right? Make sure that the length of the stroke consistent, and then the distance between one stroke to another consistent. Okay, so and then another point, the third one is the starting point, right? Let's say you start from here. You start from point A, right? And then you do the stroke like that, right? And just try to make the stroke the same length, and then the distance from one stroke to the other the same. You see what I'm saying? So this is one side, right? This is the right, this side right here for right-handed people is easy, right? For me, it's easy for me on this side. So just recap so far, right? So you want to make sure that the length of each stroke similar to one another. And the second thing is the distance between the strokes is consistent and similar. And the other one is the starting point. You want to start at one point, and then you do the stroke and see where it ends, and then you keep from here, try to make the length the same and the displacement the same, and then see how it comes out. Okay, you just keep going like this. So you practice until this side is consistent, right? And now you have to turn around and then work on the other side, right? And the other sides are, we're just talking about, the consistency in each side. Okay, we're not compare the two sides yet, right? So you go to the other side, right? And then you practice the same thing, right? You try to make the length of the stroke the same. Okay, I'm looking at the camera because one hand I hold the camera and the other one I'm doing this one is hard for me. But you got my idea, okay? Just try to make the stroke have the same length, uniform length, okay? Okay, uniform length. And then you want to make sure that the stroke have the same distance from one to from one stroke to the other, okay? You see the gaps here? Make sure that these gaps are consistently the same, okay? And then the same thing like here, like this one here, you just choose a starting point, right? You just choose some point here, and then from there you go, and then you want to make sure that the stroke almost the same, and the displacement or the distance from one to the other the same, okay? So try to make this side consistent, okay? So after you make this side, let's say this is the left side, or the right hand side and the left hand side. Let's say you make the right hand side consistent and you make the left hand side consistent, and then it's time to compare the both sides, okay? So I just want to recap. This is really hard to do, but that artist in Hong Kong, I think it's David Chang. he could do the brows without any shape. And I'm thinking, probably he has practiced this art for many years. When you practice for so long, it's just like meditation, okay? You practice for so long, you don't even think about it, and automatically you just do it, and it would come out like that. But for beginner, for like us beginner, I'm just thinking, as long as you have the length of the stroke the same, and one stroke to the other the same, right? And you choose the same starting point. And when you follow these three things right here, and try to make the right hand side consistent, right? I'm just talking about right hand side right here, right? And then you move to the other side, the left hand side, and then do the same three things over here and make sure the left hand side consistent. And after that, you try to make the right hand side and the left hand side consistent or comparable to each other. You see what I'm saying? Okay? And then another thing that might help you is you counting, right? Let's say I have an eyebrow. Let's say I have an eyebrow, right? I just quickly pretend I have an eyebrow, right? Let's say I have this eyebrow right here. Yeah. Let's say I have this eyebrow right here, right? So this is the head and that's the tail. So what you do is you keep counting, right? When you try to make the right hand side and when you try to make the left and the right consistently the same, you keep counting, right? You choose a starting point and then you do the stroke, right? Let's say 1, right? And then you do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. You see what I'm saying? So as long as the displacement, right, the distance from here to here is the same as the distance from here to here, the same distance from here to here, and these little distances here, the displacements are the same. So let's say if you're on the right hand side here, let's say you do like 40 strokes, right? And you try to do the same thing to the left hand side. If you do the same distance and you get maybe like 38, 39 strokes, so let's say this side you have 40 and the other side you have like 38 or 39, you are really good. You see what I'm saying? Because the difference is just, is it like 2%, 2.5%, right? So as long as you can keep the right hand side and the left hand side maybe within a stroke or two, right? Let's say this side is 1 stroke more than this side, or this side is 1 or 2 more strokes on this side. So as long as you keep the number of strokes on both sides are almost the same, or maybe 1 or 2 stroke difference. So the length difference would be probably about a millimeter, right? So people can still see the difference, right? The human eyes are really good at differentiate the length when they look at your eyebrows. So let's say on this side you have 40 and the other side you have 39. So this side here is about 1 millimeter longer, right? So what you do next, I recommend you to cut the distance from here to here in half. Let's say right now the distance from here to here is 1 millimeter, right? So as you cut this one in half, right? Cut it in half. So that means you go back to the drawing board, right? You do the distance, let's say this stroke here, and then from this to this one about 0.5 millimeter. You see what I'm saying? You see over here, my gap is really big. It's about 1 millimeter. But I go down here, from here to here, it's about 0.5 millimeter. And then you keep practicing. So when you move to 0.5 millimeter displacement, let's say on this side you have 40 and the other side you have 39. So that means the difference right now between the two brows is just 0.5 millimeter, right? So the difference here, if you have 1 hair stroke here, that's like 1 hair stroke difference, right? So the one brow is 1 millimeter longer than the other. But when you go down here, it's just like you cut the area in half. You see what I'm saying? So you try to practice. Basically, you keep counting the hair strokes. Make sure the number of hair strokes on both sides are similar. If you can get the number of strokes on both sides are similar, you are really, really good, right? And now the arrow just come down. It's just the distance from here to here, right? Because the same number of hair strokes, you have the right hand side and the left hand side have the same number of hair strokes. Now it just come down to the error of the displacement, the distance from one stroke to the other, right? So I'm thinking as long as you control these parameters, right, these inputs here, you practice, I don't know how long. Maybe if you have time and still young, maybe do it for a year, 1 year, and see how it comes out. But I think this is the only way. Well, not the only way, but this is one of the good ways to do it, you know. Because if you can control these parameters here, you might need not to have a shape at all. So practice, practice, and practice. I think that's the only way. Anyway, yeah, this video is a little bit long, but I just want to recap what we talked about in this video for you to practice, right? So in this video here, we don't care about the shape of the hair stroke or whatever, you know, or the beauty or the smoothness or the quality of the hair stroke. I'm just talking about the measurement, right? Number one, make sure the length of one stroke is the same to the next one, right? Yeah, you practice and make the length of the strokes, the lengths of the stroke are consistent and right. And then the next one you need to do is the displacement from one stroke to the other, right? So the distance from stroke 1 to stroke 2, and from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5. Make sure these distances here are consistently similar or the same. And then you choose a starting point to practice, right? You choose a starting point here, practice, right? Length of the stroke, practice displacement from one stroke to the other, right? And then the next one is, you know, make sure that you have the consistency for this side here, let's say this right hand side. And then you go to the left hand side, you do the same thing and make sure you have achieved the consistency on the left hand side. And after that, you try to make sure the right and the left hand brows are consistent by using the counting method, right? Counting how many strokes you have on the right hand side, counting how many hair strokes you have on the left hand side, right? So let's say if you have 40 here and 39 on the other side, use very good, right? And then you try, if you know, if the arrow, you see the arrow is within 1 or 2 hair strokes, you just cut the length or cut the distance from one stroke to the other, or cut the displacement in half. Instead of 1 millimeter here, you cut in half to 0.5 millimeter, right? To cut down the error rate, right? So, and then, you know, I mean, you have to practice a lot to achieve what, you know, to achieve what you set out to do. And the goal is, you know, make sure the left and the right hand side consistent. And this is really hard. I'm not able to do it yet. This is really tough. But I just want to give you some ideas to practice, okay? And someone who's really into this thing, maybe, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, you should be able to achieve some very decent result. Okay, I hope you enjoy this video. Hopefully this is useful to you. Okay, if you have questions, just shoot me email, okay? My email is eyebrowsacademy@gmail.com. Thank you. This is David Nguyen from Eyebrows Academy. Thank you and good night.